Okay, so last time, if you remember, that we first derived the Euler equation of motion. Okay, then using the Euler equation of motion, okay, we were trying to find out the equation for Bernoulli's statement or Bernoulli's principle, right? So now let us see in today's session how are we going to derive the Bernoulli's equation, and basically what does the Bernoulli's principle states. Okay, so let me start. So first of all, we will see the definition of Bernoulli's principle. What does a Bernoulli principle states? Okay, then we will go to the derivation part. So first of all, according to Bernoulli, the total mechanical energy per unit weight, the total mechanical energy per unit weight remains constant along a streamline for a steady, inviscid and incompressible flow of fluid. Okay. So this is the Bernoulli's principle. So it simply states that if you take a streamline, okay, and if you take 2 points, let's say point 1 and point 2 on that streamline, and if you calculate the mechanical energy at point 1 and again you calculate the mechanical energy at point 2, so you will find out that the mechanical energy at both the points is equal. They are the same. So that means if we move along a streamline, okay, then the mechanical energy is going to remain constant. But a very important point which you have to remember here, that this is true only when the flow is steady, okay, the flow is inviscid, okay, and the flow is incompressible. So these points you have to remember. That means that this statement, it will hold true only when the flow is steady, inviscid, that means the viscosity is 0, and the flow is incompressible. Okay, so we will come to this point. Okay, while discussing the derivation, this will become more clear. Okay, so now the Bernoulli's equation, it is given by P divided by rho g plus V square by 2g plus Z is equal to some constant C. Okay, so this equation is also called as mechanical energy equation. Now, what is P by rho g? Okay, so P by rho g is pressure energy per unit weight. Okay, so P by rho g is called as pressure energy per unit weight, and this is generally called as pressure head. Okay, so generally in fluid mechanics we refer to this term. Okay, so some energy per unit weight is called as head. So if it is pressure energy per unit weight, it is called as pressure head. Now another term we have V square by 2g. So this is kinetic energy per unit weight. Okay, so this is kinetic energy per unit weight, and this is called as velocity head. Very important. Okay, so this energy, you can even call it as kinetic head as well, but in usually it is referred to as velocity head. Okay, now the last one is potential energy per unit weight. So this term Z, it is going to represent potential energy per unit weight, and usually we call this as potential head. Okay, so now let us discuss the derivation of Bernoulli's equation, means from where we came to this mechanical energy equation. Okay, so now if you remember that we had the Euler equation of motion along a streamline, something like this. If you remember, delta V by delta T plus V delta V by delta S, okay, minus 1 by rho dP by ds, okay, minus G dz by ds. So this was our Euler equations of motion along a streamline. If you remember, last time we derived this. Okay. Now, first of all, for a steady flow, okay, we will go one by one. So first of all, for a steady flow, this term is going to be 0. Okay. So now, if the flow is steady, then the equation will be now V dV by ds. Now, very important thing. Now I'm taking here total differential instead of partial differential. I am going to take total differential, because right now I am focused only on the motion along the streamline. I don't care what is going on, let's say in a direction normal to the streamline, or let's say in a direction X, Y, or Z, something like that. So what I am caring about only that position vector, or let's say that point, it is on the streamline. So that's why I am going to take total differential here. So V dV by ds, this is equal to minus 1 by rho dp by ds minus g dz by ds. Okay. Now, very important thing, if you remember, what are these? These terms are all force terms. If you remember, last time I said that the left hand side and right hand side, they are nothing. They are just force per unit mass, right? Now, let me ask you, what is force multiplied by displacement? In physics, what is force multiplied by displacement? What is this?
Work done.
Work done. Okay. And work done, we all know that it is a form of energy, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So now what we do, now we are discussing everything with respect to energy. We are saying, okay, the mechanical energy along a streamline is going to be constant. So that means we have to include the energy term in our equation. Okay, we have to convert this force per unit mass equation into energy equation. So for that, what we are going to do, we will simply multiply this whole equation by ds. So force per unit mass multiplied by displacement, that is energy per unit mass, right? So now we are going to multiply this by ds term, and then we are going to integrate these terms. Then we are going to integrate all these terms, correct? So I hope here there is no confusion. So simply v dv by ds multiplied by ds integration of this is equal to minus, again, integration of 1 by rho dp by ds multiplied by ds. Okay, minus again integration of g dz by ds multiplied by ds, right? Now after integration, it's very easy to find out that this term, it is this ds, if you cancel out, then it is simply v dv. Okay, then integration of v dv is simply v square by 2. Okay, so this is v square by 2, then integration of this term. So simply again ds are going to cancel, and here it will be, okay, dp by rho. But now what we are doing, we are moving this term from the right hand side to the left hand side. Okay, so it will become plus sign. So plus integration of dp by rho. Okay, and what is the next term? The next term is again ds, they are going to cancel out, and again finally it will be simply integration of g dz. So g is always a constant. Okay, and integration of dz is simply z. Okay, so finally we have this equation, that is v square by 2 plus integration of dp by rho plus gz is equal to c. Okay, now very important thing here, this equation, first of all, this equation, is it valid for a unsteady flow? Is this equation valid for an unsteady flow? No.
No, sir. Because
yeah.
sir, we have to also consider dv by delta v by delta t.
Yeah, so very good. So we have already ignored our delta v by delta t term. So that means this equation is valid only for a steady and inviscid flow. So inviscid flow is inherent in the definition of Bernoulli's equation, right? Because we are deriving it considering the Euler equation of motion for a inviscid flow, okay, where the viscosity is 0. But can this flow can be considered as incompressible? Here, can this equation be valid for an incompressible flow?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
very
sir.
good. So this equation is valid for both incompressible as well as compressible flow. This will be valid for both kinds of flow. Okay, but let's see what happens if the flow is incompressible. Okay,
So dp will be 0.
okay. So no.
No, not
If
dp will be 0.
Density will be constant.
density will be constant. Okay, density is not going to vary, correct? So what will happen if the flow is incompressible? So my point was that this equation, always remember, this equation is going to be valid for compressible and incompressible flows both. Okay, but what happens if for an incompressible flow, okay, you assume that this rho is constant or rho is not going to vary. So if rho is constant, then what happens? You can take out this rho out of this integral sign. So once you take out this rho out of this integral sign, so inside you have generally just one term, that is integration of dp. Okay, so integration of dp is nothing, that is equal to p. So final equation for Bernoulli's, okay, statement, we have this p by rho plus v square by 2 plus gz is equal to constant. Okay, but now as I said that each of the term, okay, so let's say if we take p by rho, so what is this? This is energy per unit mass. Okay, so always remember that there are different versions of, let's say, Bernoulli's equation. Sometimes they represent simply it in this form, that is p by rho plus v square by 2 plus gz is equal to constant. Sometimes they represent in the form of p by rho g plus v square by 2g plus z is equal to constant. Okay, so this is energy per unit mass. Now you simply divide this whole equation by g. Okay, so simply divide this whole equation by g. Finally, you will have this equation, that is p by rho g, okay, plus v square by 2 plus v square by 2g okay. So let me just correct this equation.
Sir, can you go back to previous slide?
Sure, I am going back. Let me just correct this equation. So plus z. Okay, so okay, so it will be now simply you have to divide this equation by g, correct? So can I go to the next slide? Is it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now once you divide it by g, then this term will become p by rho g plus v square by 2g plus z is equal to 0. But now here, make it very clear. Now here what we are going to do. So here this is, since we have divided it by acceleration due to gravity, so this will represent energy per unit weight. Okay, so you can say this, that this is pressure energy per unit weight, or let's say kinetic energy per unit weight, and then you have this z, that is potential energy per unit weight. So energy per unit weight is generally called as head. Okay, in fluid mechanics we call this term as head. Always remember this. Okay, this is very important. Okay, it will come later on also when you are going to discuss the flow in, let's say, a pipeline or something like that, or even if you let's say talk of the principle of dam. Okay, so the dam, in a dam, what happens? The water flows, okay, from the dam towards the turbine through a penstock. Okay, so you can apply this Bernoulli's principle there as well. So one point you can take at the beginning of penstock. Penstock is just a pipe which will carry the water from the dam towards the turbine, and you can take a point at the end of penstock, and you can just apply the Bernoulli's equation. So while you are going to build the dam, the engineers actually they refer to this term, which is called as head, many times in the design of dams. Okay, so they usually refer that they never say, okay, we are going to design the dam on the basis of energy per unit weight. Okay, so they directly say, okay, we are going to consider the head while designing the dam. Okay, so this word head is very important. Now let's go to some important points which you have to keep into your mind. So this is important from the examination, competitive examination point of view as well, because there many times people ask this simple questions. So just
Sir,
note.
sir, on
Yeah,
the right side, C by G would be not there, sir.
a C by G is again some constant C1,
Okay.
nothing else. Okay, because G is not going to vary. Okay, so if you talk, let's say if we are here on Earth. Okay, so G is not going to vary, and even if you, let's say, you are going to move towards mountains or something like that, even also then also the variation in acceleration due to gravity is not very high. Okay, though it is going to vary, but it is not very high. Okay, so the variation is very negligible. So we assume G as constant, right? So now
Yes.
points to note. So first point to note is that Bernoulli's equation is valid only when flow is steady, inviscid, and incompressible. Okay, so we saw that we derived this Bernoulli's equation assuming that rho is constant. Okay, then delta V by delta T is 0, and then shear stresses, that is shear inviscid flow, the viscosity is 0. But besides this, many times, okay, many times they are the questions, sometimes they are asked in such a way in the competitive examinations that many of the students, they get confused. So let's say a very important question that is always put into competitive examinations while considering the discussion on Bernoulli's equation, that many times they will ask you whether there is any interaction with the surroundings. So see, we can derive the Bernoulli's equation using a control volume system approach also, as well as a control system approach, control mass system approach also. Okay, so here very important question, that is there any work or heat interaction between this control volume system, or you can say control mass system, and the surroundings? Okay, so sometimes they ask this question. So
No, sir. In control volume, there is no work done.
okay, so always remember that in control volume system, the interaction will be there, but it is only of okay. So okay, first of all, let me frame this question in a very simple way. So first of all, just tell me, is work and heat interaction possible for a control mass system?
Yes, sir.
It is possible. Okay, then is energy interaction possible for a control volume system? Energy
And
interaction may be in the form of heat or work.
Yes, sir.
yes,
Okay,
Yes, sir.
both are possible. Either you take a control mass system or a control volume system. But while deriving Bernoulli's equation, always keep this thing in mind, that we are assuming that there is no work or heat interaction between the fluid system. Fluid system means the system which you have considered. Either it could be a control mass system or it could be a control volume system. So there is no work or heat interaction between the between the fluid system and the surroundings. Okay, so always keep this thing in mind. Many times the students get confused because they think that the energy transfer is possible across a, let's say, control mass system or a control volume system. So they always assume that for Bernoulli's equation, the energy or work interaction is possible. But this is not true. Always remember that we are not doing, okay, that is, there is no exchange of energy between the system which you have considered and the system, okay, and the surroundings, okay, and the this thing. Okay, so let me then take a pause here.
sir. Then when you are talking about considering dams, so in reality, does Bernoulli's equation is used? Means
Yeah, the
practice.
Bernoulli's equation is applicable there because in a, let's say, a dam, what is happening, you can assume a controlled volume system there. Okay, but okay, I'm coming to that. Let me go to the next slide, then it will become more clear. Okay, so first of all, this is a ideal equation. Remember, this equation is a ideal equation. It cannot be applied to, let's say, real situations. If it is applied to real situations, it has to be modified. So let us go to the next slide. Okay, then we will discuss this. So first of all, for this equation, for this form of equation, I have assumed that there is no work or heat interaction between the system and surroundings. Now let's go to the next slide. Now, okay, I think I have missed that slide. So let me mention this here. Let me mention this here. Okay. Okay, so now coming to this. So as you asked, like, will it be applicable to a dam or not, this equation? So let me explain you. Okay, so Bernoulli's equation, though I was not interested to take it for real applications, but let us take for real fluids as well. So Bernoulli's equation for real fluids. Okay. So now coming to the actual situation. Okay. So let us take the case of a dam only, or let's say you have a pipe, anything. Now let us take this point 1 and this point as 2. Now just tell me here. So for ideal situation, I have considered that there is no work or heat interaction going between the system and surrounding. But can it be true in actual practices or in actual situations? Can it be possible?
No, sir, because
No, sir.
heat is lost, energy is
Okay.
lost in.
So why is it not possible in actual situations? Because the surroundings, they are always going to interfere with the system. So let me take the case of a hydraulic dam only. So let me take the case of this pipe. Okay. So can you tell me, so can you give me some example that, okay, through this factor, the heat interaction is going on between the, let's say, pipe and the surrounding. So can you give me
Sir,
one example?
sir, due to the flow, there is a resistance offered by the pipe in the flow of the.
Okay, so one is this. Anything else? Okay, so see, that is a very simple. So one is the resistance. Okay, that is the resistance which is being offered by the surface of this pipe. That is the walls of this pipe. Okay, so definitely very important thing I'm going to mention here. We all know that real fluids always possess some viscosity. Okay. So now I am not going into very depth. So I am just giving you an idea. So last time, if you remember, I discussed about internal friction when we are close to a flat surface. So it is very obvious when the fluid layer, this is very close to this pipe surface. So it will always suffer from some internal resistance. Okay. So real fluids, they always possess some viscosity. So because of that, when the flow, it is going to happen between these 2 points, 1 and 2, then there will always be some loss of energy. There will be always some loss of energy. So let me denote that loss of energy by this term HL. So let's say I'm going, okay. So there will be internal resistance, or you can say in actual situation, the viscosity is never zero, right? So internal resistance or friction. Okay. So let me call this the energy loss while going from this point 1 to 2 as HL, that is head loss. Okay. Now tell me the equation for this. Okay. So one side I am writing down, the next side you will tell me. Okay. So P1 by rho G plus V1 square by 2G, correct? Plus Z1. Now this should be equal to P2 by rho G plus V2 square by 2G plus Z2. Now tell me,
Plus HL, plus
Plus
HL.
HL.
HL. Okay, so it is very easy. However, just assume this thing that this is a simplification of this condition. Okay, in real situations, actually this phenomena is much more complex. So here it's just a simplification that we took into account the viscosity factor by using this HL. Okay, but the actual derivation, the actual mechanics behind this is very complex, which is right now like beyond the scope of this syllabus. Okay, so now let's move to another topic, another important topic. So that so see, right now I'm just discussing the concepts. All these concepts are very important. So you can after that we will be solving some numerical problems as well. But many a times even the students, they finish this fluid mechanics course, but they are not aware of these concepts. So the concepts building is very important for me. Okay, the numerical and these parts are okay, but just try to realize all these concepts in a very clear and in a very better way. Okay, so now let's talk about irrotational flow. So we never discussed about an irrotational flow. So I am going to discuss about irrotational flow through the root of Bernoulli's equation. Okay, there are other ways also to discuss irrotational flow, but I am going to discuss this thing with respect to a Bernoulli's equation. Okay, so now let's talk about this. So first of all, we know that P by rho g plus V square by 2g, okay, plus Z, this is going to be constant, okay, along a streamline. So we will say that the mechanical energy is constant only along a streamline, considering that the flow is steady, inviscid, and incompressible. But now just tell me what is going to happen if we move, let's say this is one streamline, this is one streamline, okay, then this is another streamline. So just tell me what is going to happen if we move from streamline A to streamline B. So will the mechanical energy remain constant between these two streamlines as well? Okay. So is the mechanical energy going to remain constant between this one and this one?
No, sir.
No,
But
sir.
there will be change in energy.
There will be change in mechanical energy. So whatever equation which we have derived initially, that is valid only when we travel along a streamline. But if we are going to switch between two streamlines, okay, if we are going to move from streamline A to streamline B, then the mechanical energy is going to, okay, vary. So that means here the value of constant will be something C1. Okay, here the value of constant will be something C2. Okay. Now coming to this. So there is a situation, there is a special situation where you will find that this mechanical energy, okay, or you can say the mechanical head, okay, that is going to remain constant everywhere in the flow field. Everywhere in the flow field, that means even if you are going to switch from one streamline to another streamline, or if you take any point, okay, in the flow field, okay, represented by a Eulerian coordinate system, right? So you will find that this mechanical energy is always constant everywhere. So what is this situation? This situation is true when the flow is irrotational. Very important thing. So we say that this is true when the flow is irrotational. So now let us see that what is an irrotational flow, okay, and let us prove this. Let us prove this theorem or prove this statement, okay. So first of all, coming to this. So first of all, let us consider a fluid element in a two-dimensional plane. Okay, in a two-dimensional plane, that is x, y coordinate, and this is my fluid element. Okay. Now the velocity field. Let us assume the velocity field for the two-dimensional plane. Okay, it is given by v vector is equal to u I cap plus j cap v. Okay. So let us say this is our velocity field. Now for irrotational flow, okay, generally we say that this delta cross v vector should be 0. So this is usually called as curl of v vector. Now how we arrived at this equation, okay, so I will explain you, give you a brief idea of this. How did we arrive at this equation? See, if you take this fluid element, okay, so this fluid element, it is going to rotate, okay. Okay, let me explain you in a different way. So let's say this fluid element, it is going to be deformed like this. Okay. So I have taken a fluid element, okay, where in the flow field, let's say after time dt, this fluid element deformed to this shape. So this fluid element, let us say it deformed to this shape. Now if you take, let's say this side as AB and this side as AD, okay, if you take these two sides, so after time dt you will find out that this AB, it has moved to AB dash, and this AD, it has moved to AD dash, okay, and the deformation is such a way that you will find out, you can realize this in this way, that this AB, it is rotating about this point A, right? And similarly this AD, you will find that this is going to rotate about this point A. Okay, so let us say that in time dt, okay, this AB, it rotates to AB dash through an angle alpha, and AD rotates to AD dash through an angle beta. So what is the rotation factor here? So see here, very important thing, that generally we define the rotation about A, or we can say that about the Z axis, the axis which is perpendicular to this point A. This is defined as 1 by 2. Okay, so delta V by delta X minus delta U by delta Y. Okay, so this is the rotation factor, okay, which we are going to take into account in a flow field. So the flow field is represented by this, okay, U and V components. So again, keep this thing in mind that this kind of rotation is possible only when this U is a function of both X and Y, and similarly V is also a function of both X and Y. Okay, so I'm not going into very deep. So right now, just imagine this thing as that, okay, for irrotational flow, okay, for irrotational flow, okay. So see, now we define the rotational component about this point A by this equation, 1 by 2 delta V by delta X minus delta U by delta Y. Okay, so this is nothing. So if you take this as, let's say, 1 by 2, so this is rotating in this direction, okay, in the anti-clockwise direction, and this AD is rotating in the clockwise direction. So it is nothing, 1 by 2, simply 10 alpha minus 10 beta. Okay, so in place of 10 alpha 10 beta, okay, this component, the distance through which it is rotated, it is given by delta V by delta X, and the distance through which this element is rotating, it is given by delta U by delta Y. So 10 alpha is delta V by delta X by AB, and 10 beta, it is given by delta U by delta Y divided by AD. So generally this AD and AB, we normalize it, and finally we call it that, okay, the rotation component will be given by 1 by 2 10 alpha minus 10 beta. That means 1 by 2 delta V by delta X minus delta U by delta Y. So for irrotational flow, generally we assume this omega Z as 0. Okay, so now you don't need to go into very complex mechanics. Okay, so just keep this thing in mind that for an irrotational flow, generally we see that the curl of V vector is 0. So what is this curl of V vector? Curl of V vector is nothing. It is simply delta operator cross V vector. So if you write down into this form, I cap, J cap, K cap, then you have delta by delta X, delta by delta Y, delta by delta Z, then U, V, W. So now I cap, you simply multiply I cap, then this will be simply delta W by delta Y. Okay, then this minus multiplied by delta V by delta Z. Similarly, minus J cap, when you go minus J cap, okay, then again you see that this is delta W by delta X minus delta U by delta Z, and then again you go to K cap, then K cap simply multiplied by, okay, delta V by delta X minus delta U by delta Y. So since we are interested in the, okay, rotation component, we are seeing here that this for rotational irrotational flow, this rotation component, or you can simply say the angular velocity of this element about this point A, that is going to be 0, and we are interested in the Z axis. So we will take this K cap term, okay, and this should be equal to 0. So for irrotational flow, this term should be equal to 0. So just for now, just keep this thing in mind. Okay, now let us move to next slide. So finally we have delta V by delta X is equal to delta U by delta Y if we consider the flow field as a two-dimensional flow field, okay, in the XY plane. Now let's move to Euler equation for steady flow. So I am already mentioning here that the flow is steady. So Euler equation for a steady flow is simply given by, we all know that, if you remember, rho U delta U by delta X plus V delta U by delta Y, that is equal to minus delta P by delta X. Okay, so what we are going to actually trying to prove, we are trying to prove that the mechanical energy is constant in the entire flow field. So again, we have to take the Euler equation. So Euler equation is given by this two equations. So now here, see, here your Y direction is actually the vertical direction. So in place of Z, initially we used to take here Z, okay, delta P by delta Z minus rho G. But here, since your vertical direction is this Y direction, so then we are going to take rho U again simply delta V by delta X plus V delta V by delta Y, because we are now talking about the Y direction, motion in Y direction. That is equal to minus delta P by delta Y minus rho G. Okay. Now what we have to do, now simply replace here in this equation, replace this delta U by delta Y by delta V by delta X, and in this equation replace this delta V by delta X by delta U by delta Y. Okay, now again multiply this equation by dx and this equation by dy. Okay, finally you have an equation like this. Okay, u delta U by delta X into dx plus delta U by delta Y into dy plus v delta V by delta X into dx plus delta V by delta Y into dy is equal to minus 1 by rho delta P by delta X into dx plus delta P by delta Y into dy minus g dy. Now I am going to mention very important point here. Okay, I am going to mention.
Sir, can you
Can
just
you go back to the previous slide?
yes, sir.
Shall I repeat here? This might look complex to you. Okay, so just that's why I'm going slightly slowly. So here I have done nothing. Here I have just taken the Euler equation in the x direction and y direction. Okay, and then for e-rotational flow, I have concluded that okay, this component of velocity, okay, this is angular velocity, this is nothing, so this should be 0. Okay, so if this is 0, then the flow is e-rotational. Then I'm going to this one. Okay, so you can see here now what I did, I just replaced this delta U by delta Y by delta V by delta X, and I just replaced this delta V by delta X by this delta U by delta Y. I simply multiplied this equation by dx dy. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so shall I go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Now here it is very easy. Now I have just added these two equations, nothing else. So after adding, very easy. Here now I am going to mention very important point. Now if we consider an arbitrary displacement, okay, or a random displacement, let's say dr vector. Okay, so this dr vector, the displacement of this two-dimensional fluid element, let's say it is given by dx I cap plus dy j cap. So let's say within time dt, this fluid element moved through this displacement dr vector, and this dr vector is nothing. This is the component of displacement in the x direction plus the component of displacement in the y direction. Now, if you consider this thing, then this du is nothing. This is delta U by delta X dx plus delta U by delta Y dy plus delta U by delta Z into dz. So this is simple mathematics, that total differential is equal to the sum of differentials in the individual directions, nothing else. So this is our total differential. Now this is individual or partial differential in the x direction multiplied by dx, then partial differential in the y direction multiplied by dy, then partial differential in the z direction multiplied by dz. So it's very easy. So total differential du, dv, dp, you can represent in this way, right? So now you have to do nothing. You have to simply replace these components, nothing else. So it will be simply u du. Okay, this is u, this term is du. Then you have v. Okay, and this is v. This term is dv. Okay, so dv is nothing, delta v by delta x multiplied by dx plus delta v by delta y multiplied by dy. Okay, so v dv. Then this is again minus 1 by rho. This term is dp, and again minus g dy. Finally, this is what? This is what? If you take the total differential outside, then this is nothing. This is u square plus v square by 2. So you can differentiate this. Okay, so this is, if let's say you differentiate this, then this will be 2u du plus 2v dv, nothing else. Okay, so again you will reach to the same equation. So this is total differential of u square plus v square divided by 2. This should be equal to minus 1 by rho dp minus g dy. Finally, this is what? This is nothing. This is your resultant velocity. V is equal to u square plus v square. Okay, so now you are going to take the resultant velocity, that is capital V. So d of capital V square by 2 is equal to minus 1 by rho dp minus g dy. Okay, finally, again, if you integrate this equation, okay, and you consider that the flow is incompressible, okay, finally you will get the same equation, that is P by rho plus V square by 2 plus Gy is equal to C. So what is this equation? This is Bernoulli's equation. So now let us have a complete picture of this. So the complete picture of this, that we started with what? We started with the condition for irrotational flow, which was curl of V vector is equal to 0. Okay. So the condition for irrotational flow was that the curl of V vector should be 0. That means delta V by delta x, it should be equal to delta U by delta Y. Now we use this condition for irrotationality into Euler equation of motion. Okay, we substituted this into Euler equation of motion, and finally we found out an equation of energy for a irrotational flow. Okay, and we observed that this equation of energy for irrotational flow is nothing. This is simply the Bernoulli's equation, and the assumptions are there that the flow is steady, incompressible and inviscid. These assumptions are already there. So now this is nothing. This is our Bernoulli's equation. Then we can conclude that for an irrotational flow, the total mechanical energy remains constant. Okay, irrespective of the arbitrary displacement vector, dr vector. Very important term. So what was dr? Dr was nothing. It was an arbitrary displacement. We don't know whether this dr vector is along a streamline, or it is at an angle to the streamline, or it is perpendicular to the streamline. We don't care. Okay, so this dr vector is independent. So we found out that for an for a random displacement, arbitrary displacement dr vector, the mechanical energy, it is going to remain constant in the entire flow field. And this condition is true only when the flow is irrotational. So many a times you will find that in many books, simply people say that if the flow is ideal, then the mechanical energy is going to remain constant. Then don't use any other word, steady, incompressible, irrotational. They never use any other word. They simply say that the flow is ideal. So if the flow is ideal, that means the flow is steady, inviscid, incompressible and irrotational. And simply they say that the total mechanical energy is constant. They never state that, okay, it is constant along a streamline, or it is constant, let's say in a direction perpendicular to streamline. Okay, or it is going to vary from one streamline to another streamline. They never say this. They simply say the total mechanical energy is constant. So you should be the one who should know this thing, that this is true. This is true only when the flow is steady, inviscid, incompressible, okay, and irrotational. Correct? So these four terms you have to keep into your mind. Correct? So now for today, I think like this will be enough, but let us visualize this physically. So I'm going to share one video. I'm going to share one video with all of you, so that you can like slightly visualize that, okay, what is this irrotational flow? Can anyone guess like how can we visualize this flow, irrotational or rotational flow? See, we are talking about something about rotation, right? So that means your fluid should be moving linearly, or it should be moving in an angular direction.
Angular direction.
Angular.
So we can visualize rotational and irrotational flow using a fluid which is, let's say, circulating. Or very simple example, if you take that, okay, if you turn on your tap water, and if you see the water that is passing through the hole in the wash basin, okay, so that is kind of rotating flow. Okay, but I will tell you some interesting things, that even if the flow is rotating, it can happen that your flow is irrotational. Okay, so that is like slightly a more complex concept, but let's see a video. So is this video visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I'm going to play this. See, my point is understanding the concepts is important. Okay, everything else. Till now, we saw it mathematically, but let's visualize it.
In the case of water in a tank rotating about its axis, the velocity varies directly with the radius. Obviously, lines or sticks, either tangential or normal to the streamlines, will rotate just as they would in the vortex filaments seen before.
So see, very important thing here. What just happened? Even if your fluid is rotating, we dropped a, let's say, matchstick, right? But that matchstick you observed, it was not rotating. So even is the flow is, let's say, okay, is rotating in nature, or it is, let's say, moving in an angular direction, or in, let's say, in a circular path, but it could happen that the fluid element is behaving as a solid body. So this thing actually I wanted to mention.
However, if the velocity varies inversely with the radius, as it tends to do in the field of flow surrounding a vortex filament, whether above a drain or in a tornado, a line or stick in the tangential direction will tend to rotate in the opposite sense from one in the normal, but at the same rate. Two perpendicular sticks fastened together will then not rotate.
So this is totally behaving as a solid body.
Such flow is called
There is no rotation of this cross. So you can assume that fluid element at that point, it is not going to
The
rotate.
central filament itself, of course, is highly rotational.
Now at the center you observe, it is
Flow
highly
in
rotational.
concentric circles is not the only kind that is sometimes highly rotational and sometimes
So
almost
when the water, it passes through the hole in the wash basin. So this is very important, that if you go to at the center of that hole, you will find that the flow is highly rotational. Okay. But if you move slightly far from the center, then you will find that the flow is irrotational. That means if you drop a cross, or let's say matchstick, it will perform a solid body rotation. Okay. It will move something like a object. The fluid element will behave like a solid body.
rotational. Uniform flow between parallel walls is usually rotational.
See here. So now this is possible even when the flow is linear. That is, the flow is between two parallel walls.
On the contrary, either non-uniform or unsteady flow that is rapidly accelerated is very nearly irrotational. Now, the important part about irrotational flow is that the flow pattern can be approximated graphically or mathematically by the construction of a network of streamlines and normal lines, which are so spaced that they divide each other locally into equal parts. It may be shown mathematically for any shape of the solid boundaries relative to its flow without is thus sketched. It is thus possible to have rotational flow without deformation, as in a tank of any liquid turning on its axis at constant speed.
So this is nothing. This is simply a cylindrical tank you can imagine. And now in this cylindrical tank, okay, you have some fluid and you are rotating that cylindrical tank. So this is nothing. So there we are observing, trying to observing whether the flow is rotational or irrotational.
Conversely, the motion of a viscous liquid between cylinders having tangential velocities that are inversely proportional to their radii is...
So right now I'm going to stop here. So this is the case of, let's say, vortex or force vortex flow. So I will discuss this in the next session. So for now, just you can even perform this experiment at your home also. So take a water in a glass and then try to just rotate the fluid in the glass with some spoon or something, and then just drop a matchstick. Okay, you can observe the rotational flow there as well. Okay. So I think for today's it is enough. So any query, anything?
Sir, just a doubt.
Yeah. Tell me.
Sir, in the video, when he put the cross, means this, put the cross in the center, it was rotating, but
Ah.
while it was at the edges, not on the edges, but on the concentric circles of the center, it
Right.
was
Good.
performing a solid flow.
Okay.
Sir, I cannot. Sir,
So
what's
just
the
think about this. Okay. So just think about this. So what actually caused that cross to rotate when it reached near to the center? Just imagine. See, if the cross is rotating, so then there has to be some additional force, right? Which is coming into picture. So see what happens if you rotate a
because we are
fluid.
not because we are not assume that it is a vertex flow, no. In a vertex flow, it would be like that. It is going towards the center. In a center, there is a high rotational.
I will come to vertex and that flow in the next session. But now just think about this, that what just happened to that cross, that when it was slightly away from the center, okay, then it was not rotating. But when it came to the center, then it started rotating. So just compare this situation with the flow of water over a flat surface. So there, if you remember, when I said that the water, when it is close to the flat surface, very close to the flat surface, then what is going to happen?
Viscosity.
Viscosity will come into picture. So this is the same thing actually happens here also. So when you move very close towards the center, so actually what happened, you will find that even you take water, if you rotate that water, you will find, you can very easily imagine this thing, that at the center the internal friction will be high, and if you go away from the center, the internal friction will reduce, because at the center the fluid layers, they are in constant motion relative to each other. Okay, constant circulatory motion relative to each other. So at the center, actually the internal friction is large. So when this cross, it reaches at the center, so due to that friction, it starts rotating. Okay, due to that internal friction, okay, an unbalance is created, an unbalance in the forces is created, and then it starts rotating. So this is the reason.
Yes, sir.
However, in the next session, I will tell you, if you consider ideally, then ideally, if you consider it mathematically, you can say, then we assume that the velocity at the center is infinite. That is the point of singularity. But in actual situation, it happens like this. Okay, anything else?
Sir, in real life, is there any method or a process from which we can make a viscosity zero?
Superfluids, superfluids have viscosity zero, but they have temperatures, very less temperature, no sir, very low temperatures.
So that is possible. See, if you okay, then this is a deep discussion. So let's say if you take the viscosity of a liquid, so the viscosity of a liquid is due to which factor? It is due to the adhesion between the molecules, correct? Sorry, cohesion between the liquid molecules, not adhesion. I'm sorry. So it is due to the cohesion or attractive forces between the liquid molecules. If you increase the temperature, right? So the cohesive forces between the liquid molecules, they are going to decrease. Now they will start behaving that they have, like, let's say, like very negligible viscosity, because now the molecules, they will start moving very far from each other. But my point is, always keep this thing in mind, that this is true only for a liquid. If you do it for a gas, then what will happen?
For gases, the cohesive forces increase with temperature.
For gases, what will happen? So see, this is very important thing, like which okay, I will right now mention that for gases, actually the reason for viscosity is not cohesion or anything. So for gases, actually the reason for viscosity is momentum transfer, or very easily you can say the collision between the molecules, because we know that the attractive forces between the gaseous molecules is very negligible. It is already very small as compared to a liquid. Okay, that's why the gases, they can never be contained into an open container. They will immediately flow. Okay, so that is one of the reasons that the viscosity in the gases, okay, it is due to collision between the molecules, or you can say there is transfer of energy, or you can say momentum from one molecule to another. So here for gas, actually, if you increase the temperature, then the viscosity is going to increase, because the kinetic energy of molecules is going to increase, and the number of collisions, that is also going to increase. Okay, so very okay, just do some research on this one also. So if we came to this discussion, so this is possible for liquids, that if you increase the temperature, the viscosity will always be negligible. Okay, you can ignore the viscosity. But for gases, this is not true. Another thing, I just said the gases, they cannot be contained into a container or something like that. So just try out, then why doesn't it happen that the atmosphere, the Earth atmosphere, it all flies away into space? Okay, so just try to search this. Can anyone tell me right now?
Pressure difference.
Anything else?
Sir, gravity of Earth's
Very
flow.
good. So gravity is already there, but does it mean that the molecules from the gases, the molecules from the Earth's atmosphere, they are not escaping into the space? So
Means,
just try to do some research on this. I will leave it to you. That
sir, can I just make a rough assumption? Fluid continuum. Fluid continuum
fluid continuum. Okay.
means
Something.
the number of particles exiting the Earth's atmosphere equals the number of particles entering the Earth.
Yeah, so this could be one situation. This could be one situation. So I also don't know the answer of this. Okay, so just try to find out, do some research on this. That does it happen that the air molecules or the atmosphere molecules from the Earth, they don't escape into the space? So is it possible? So you will know gravity, because gravity, if you place the gases in an open container, then also the gravity is there, but still they escape the open container. Okay, then anything else related to this, what I taught today?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to end the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all of you.